Don't take any vaccine. Don't take any vaccine. Praise the Most High.
My name is Catherine Osman Fitz. I'm the publisher of the Solari Report and managing director of Solari Investment Advisory Services. If a few people want to control the many, the question is how can you herd all the sheep into the slaughterhouse without them realizing and resisting? So the perfect thing is invisible enemies. So we had the war on terrorism, with invisible terrorists, and then now a virus is perfect because it's invisible. You can't prove that it doesn't exist. Essentially, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to buy into a solution before they see where it's ultimately going to go. Because you're talking about a transaction system that is no longer a currency, it's a control system. So it's like a credit at the company store. If every central bank comes out with a digital central bank currency, they have the ability to turn your money on and off. So if you don't behave, that's it. And of course, as we know, they want to combine this with transhumanism, which means literally, I take injections that can institute the equivalent of an operating system in my body. And so I'm hooked up to the financial system, literally, physically. What COVID-19 is the institution of controls necessary to convert the planet from democratic process to technocracy. So what we're watching is a change in control and an engineering of new control systems. So think of this as a coup d'etat. It's much more like a coup d'etat. Than a virus. So for 20 some years in the United States, we've had a financial coup d'etat. And we knew at the end of 1995, a decision was made to move much of the assets and money out of the country. That was part of sort of bubbling the global economy with globalization. And they knew that once they'd finished moving all those assets, that they would have to consolidate and change the fundamental system. So after the financial coup, you've stolen all the money in the pension funds, you've stolen all the money in the government, and now rather than turn and tell people, well, we stole your money, you need an excuse that will allow you to consolidate and change the fundamental system. And so you have a magic virus. And the magic virus says, we have to fundamentally change the system. And, thanks to the magic virus, there's no money in Social Security. Thanks to the magic virus, there's no money in the Treasury. And you have your perfect magic excuse.
Everything can be blamed on the virus.
Yeah, the magic virus can, it's amazing because every implication of the financial coup has been magically solved by the magic virus. It's quite, if you're a financial person and you look at the world through the mathematics of time and money, it's quite amazing that anybody believes it, but they do.
Right.
Right. It's part of joining the, what C.J. Hopkins calls the Covidian cult. You join the cult and you say, oh, yeah, well, the magic virus took all the money from Social Security.
Yeah.
Magic virus caused our pension funds to, not be sufficient.
What do you think the technocracy that we're being pushed towards will look like?
So the technocracy that they're pushing towards is what is called transhumanism. So essentially what you do is you use injections to inject materials into the body that create the equivalent of an operating system. So everybody knows the idea of Microsoft causing you to download an operating system in your computer that gives Microsoft and a variety of other players a backdoor into your computer. And And every month or 2 or 3, you've got to update it because they're viruses, right? It's back to the magic virus that can solve all problems. And so this is a similar system for your body. You inject materials into your body that essentially create the equivalent of an operating system and a receiver, and you can literally hook everybody up to the cloud. And that includes hooking them up in a way that their transaction system, the Bible calls it the mark of the beast.
The Bible calls it the mark of the beast.
You're basically talking about being able to digitally identify and track people in connection with their financial transactions. So it's a world of zero privacy. But more importantly, what's important to understand is if you then institute one or more central bank cryptos, you're now talking about a system where every central bank in the world can shut you off individually from transacting if they don't like the way you're behaving. So many people are familiar with the social credit system in China. It's very similar. You're basically, if you install the smart grid in their car, their community, and now literally in their body, you've got 24/7 surveillance. And if people don't do what you say and behave the way you want, they can and will shut off your money. So, and they'll also have spatial control. If they say you can't travel more than 5 miles, that's it. Because you're in a complete digital control system.
The total economic loss of COVID-19 in terms of GDP and health costs is estimated to be around $16 trillion, according to a study by 2 Harvard University professors. To put that in perspective, that is 90% of total GDP. Clearly, we need to focus on reopening the economy as soon as possible.
And I'm hearing there's talk about a vaccine passport. What is that?
Yeah, so this is this kind of futuristic idea where we actually have a requirement to get a certificate of vaccination before we can do things.
A requirement to get a certificate of vaccination before we can do things.
It's pretty clear that vaccination certificates are moving forward. And given that, how do we do it right?
What if we were to be required to prove to employers, airlines, or sporting venues that we're immune to the virus?
I think it's a little premature to be thinking and to be talking about how do we get people these immunization certificates.
The last thing you want to do is create further inequalities and make people feel like they really can't access the same things.
We have to be ready for this to happen in the future. And if we miss the window a little bit and don't make money off it or whatever the financial goal is, some way, shape, or form, we've all realized that this has got to be in place.
So what are vaccine verifications exactly? And can they speed up a return to normal? For herd immunity, between 58% and 94% of the population need to be immune. That means anywhere from 192 to 311 million Americans. As of mid-January 2021, nearly 10 million Americans have received at least their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine.
While the vast majority of Americans believe that the vaccine is important to facilitate a return to normal life, nearly half plan to defer vaccination for 3 months or up to a year. And so this, I think, combined with the inherent challenge of manufacturing and distributing vaccines, really threatens to slow progress towards herd immunity and ultimately to economic recovery.
That's where immunization verification passports or certificates could come in. Remember the yellow card immunization forms? In the age of a global pandemic, that could be a smartphone application or a QR code on paper.
If we can make it work for travel, I think it allows us to study the technology as well as the validation, as well as the confidence in privacy that will then allow us to think about how do we use this for other things. I don't think it's going to make, and I don't believe it's going to make social distancing and masking go away until we hit herd immunity. But I think it's this process of maybe we can reopen up things a little bit faster.
For nearly 5 years, Dakota Gruner has been advocating for digital IDs as a basic human need, especially in developing countries. She's currently on a WHO-sponsored working group for smart vaccination certificates. Over the course of 6 months, the group is hoping to establish global standards for these types of solutions.
This is a very complex multi-stakeholder effort. Obviously, they're trying to do this at an international level. But the idea is to do something, I think, quite similar to what we've done with ID 2020 certification, which is what are the specifications of a good digital ID solution, or in this case, a smart vaccination certificate, and how do we get to the point where there's almost a list of WHO recognized solutions. But, we don't pretend that in the interim, some of these solutions aren't moving forward independently.
Dozens of startups, as well as major companies like Microsoft, Ticketmaster, Apple, and Google, have shown interest or are currently working on creating their version of an immunization certificate for COVID-19.
I think where we're at least on the technical side, is a bit of a Wild West. It's pretty clear that vaccination certificates are moving forward, and given that, how do we do it right? And how do we ensure that that investment is made in the sort of greatest possible way? This is not the time to move fast and break things.
Onfido is one of the startups who jumped on the idea early. As an identity verification company with $200 million in funding, a vaccination app was a no-brainer.
So the first thing where we fit in is making sure that it is Kevin Trilly or Tala that is the person signing up for this service. And then there's a second step that says use the core service, book your travel in the case of SideHide or whatever. Then the third is being able to add a new piece that says embed your health status as part of that application, so it can be shared with the person that you're booking travel with. And then in the case of the other one with the employment, you'd sign up for the service, you'd declare your employment status, and then you'd have some health, testing status that you would update and maintain so you can come to the office on a regular basis.
The life cycle of a pandemic looks something like this. Right now, we're in the pandemic phase, meaning there's widespread human infection. Even with a vaccine, there's a lot we don't know. For example, the duration of immunity, or if asymptomatic transmission can happen despite vaccination. And more importantly, only about 3% of the US population has been immunized so far.
Our focus should be on getting people vaccinated. Once we get enough people vaccinated that we can actually we can leverage that vaccinated pool as something that we can use, that's when I think the immunization certificates become something we can talk about.
That should happen around the time 40 to 50% of the population have been vaccinated, according to LJ. Even then, it's an interim solution. If the pandemic turns endemic, meaning seasonally circulating in society, or we simply reach herd immunity, the use of verification solutions becomes pointless.
It could be a year, right? Depending on how slowly we eke up, and remember, if more people take vaccination, if we're staying below that 75% threshold, let's use that as a threshold, and that could change. If we hover below that, it takes that much longer to get up there, right? Because we've reduced infection enough such that less people are going to get sick, which is wonderful. But it also means that if people don't get vaccinated, we're going to be creeping to that level. So thank goodness we have that vaccine. The reason we're having this conversation is because we have a vaccine.
Vaccination records in the US are tracked by 61 independently run immunization information systems. According to the American Immunization Registry Association, they help public health authorities ensure that patients are administered a second dose and to monitor the safety and efficacy of the vaccines. Sharing data between state lines requires approval from the governor or a health officer, and very few have embraced vaccine apps so far.
The data in these systems are validated by the state health department, by the provider who vaccinated, so on and so forth. How do we connect that data with some form of digital ID that the patient can now carry with them?
Is it worthwhile to try and stretch our already stretched super thin public health resources? I'm not sure this is the right time and place to do that.
Collaboration between governments, private providers, and international stakeholders will be key in the success of immunization verifications. Onfido is based in the UK and submitted their product to the British government in the spring of 2020. Kevin says they're not focused on scale at the moment. this has to come out in stages.
There's a lot we have to figure out still about a system like this. So in a way, we're sort of innovating. And if we can impact 25% of the population this cycle, it's great. That's a huge impact of people that could go further into their worlds, in this really restricted world that we're in today.
While much of the app can be customized, privacy cannot. A poorly designed digital ID solution could become a surveillance tool.
Privacy is not a concern until it is a concern. So it must be architected into the system at the beginning. And the example I would say is, you don't need to tell me your first name, last name, your address, everything about yourself, and all of your testing data, and give that to everybody. You should just say, I'm good. And the way you know it's me is because I use my face to unlock my phone, to access that credential, to then send it to you. And then what's sent to you is just the status. If you can do it in that way, then privacy is protected.
As with anything that entails digitization and access, there are some equity concerns. For one, requiring that individuals are vaccinated to be able to participate is risky, especially for communities of color who are more skeptical of the vaccine.
The last thing those communities want is for Big Brother to be watching.
Big Brother to be watching.
The other thing is the intention may be to enable some people to go back to work, but is it seen as, well, if I don't get the vaccine or if I hesitate to the vaccine, will that cut my opportunities?
Another equity concern is regarding access to technology and high-speed internet. Some providers are working on making ID verifications on paper, a QR code embedded with information that can't be falsified.
What we design and build today is going to have longevity past this. This may have utility in routine immunization. This may have utility in a whole host of use cases outside of healthcare.
We should be leading the world on this problem. So I think we have a second opportunity here to come with technology and other systems where we can get back, and maybe the next one, we're actually going to lead the world in the way that we handle this.
Don't take any vaccine. Don't take any vaccine. Praise the Most High.